Almost 2 months ago now, my husband came home from a routine shopping trip with a bit of a strange story. In the shopping center quite near where we live, there's an upper level of parking, and when he was there, he saw some strange cars parked there, a number of people standing by the parked cars, seeming to look out over the shoppers and businesses. My husband told me this and asked me if I had seen this when I was there at the shopping center, and I said no, I hadn't. But a few days later, I happened to go to a different business in the same shopping center. I was waiting my turn, and one of the employees engaged me in conversation, and she asked me, "Did you know that ICE is here?" It turns out the vehicles and the people in the upper level parking were immigrations and customs enforcement officers. And the employee said to me, "Make sure you tell all your friends and all your family." I think that all of us have become aware of the impact felt in our local community due to the presence of ICE. Some of us have had experiences like the one I described, and I know, because we have a diversity of political opinions in our community, that some of us feel differently than others about this specific political issue at this specific point in time. But what I didn't know, until I attended via Zoom a panel discussion 2 weeks ago, is how this political issue is impacting the American Jewish community. This discussion was co-hosted by HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and the Rabbinical Assembly. I think we're all aware that these two organizations do have their own political leanings, and of course we all have our own opinions on that. But still, what I learned surprised me, and it concerned me deeply, and I wanted to make sure that you all have a chance to hear what I heard. The first person who spoke on the panel was a man who had a career working for Jewish communal organizations. He had a very Jewish upbringing. Synagogue, summer camp, day school, he had Jewish friends, he married someone who's Jewish, and he's raising his children as Jews. But his background is not entirely what you'd expect. His father was born Jewish, his mother converted to Judaism, but he himself is adopted. Ethnically, he's Hispanic from South America, and he has brown skin. His parents adopted him as an infant and gave him the most Jewish upbringing they possibly could. He remarked, "We Jews are the chosen people." And he said, "My mother chose to be Jewish, my parents chose to adopt me, and I didn't choose any of this." So his very Jewish life was rolling along very Jewishly and very smoothly until immigrations and customs enforcement showed up in his community. All of a sudden, he was a target. He had to explain to his children, born Jewish, attending Jewish schools and summer camps, having Jewish friends, that their brown skin and their father's brown skin made things different for them, made things dangerous for them in their community. He remarked, with a mixture of emotion and detachment, that he had learned about the Holocaust as a child, he had educated others about the Holocaust in his career working for the Jewish community, and now he found himself and his family at risk and in danger, but not specifically because he was Jewish. His presentation didn't wrap up neatly. He simply acknowledged that this was his story. The second person who spoke on the panel was a Jewish mom with light skin. She adopted her daughters as infants, raised them as Jews, and they're Hispanic from South America with brown skin. Essentially, she told the same story from a different perspective, the perspective of a mother being worried about the safety of her children. To me, the message was both surprising and clear. This issue is not just affecting our neighbors, it is affecting us. The Shabbat, we've spoken about this already, is Shabbat Zachor. It's the Shabbat immediately preceding Purim. It has a special maftir to our reading that Sammy read for us so beautifully. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how, undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary, and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. So when the Lord your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. It is an imperative in our tradition to remember that we have enemies, to remember that we have been surprised and attacked, to remember that in any moment we might be vulnerable. When we hear the reading for Shabbat Zachor and when we celebrate Purim, we're reminded of this. These actions help us remember and not forget. Yet this is not the sole remembrance of Jewish tradition. This is not the sole facet of Jewish identity. B'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. It's an imperative in Jewish tradition also for each person to understand that God has personally freed us from slavery in Egypt. It is imperative in Jewish tradition to thank, praise, bless, exalt, and revere God who brought us from slavery to freedom, grief to celebration, servitude to redemption. We must literally sing God's praises, and in case this is sort of sounding familiar, this is the part in the Passover Seder when we begin singing Hallel. We have this concept that Liz read about for us so beautifully of Purim Jews and Passover Jews. Many rabbis have written and spoken about this idea, and as we read, this idea of Purim Jews and Passover Jews was first articulated by Yossi Klein Halevi, an American Israeli author and journalist. He explains, on the one hand, we must be Purim Jews. We must remember how the tribe of Amalek attacked us without provocation when we were wandering in the desert, and the message of that command is don't be naive. On the other hand, we must be Passover Jews. We must remember that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. The message of that command is don't be brutal. The holiday of Purim teaches us every year to be alert to the threats around us. And the holiday of Passover teaches us every year to have empathy for those who are oppressed. In this particular place and country, at this particular moment in time, it can seem that these two teachings are in opposition. In this particular place and time, it can seem that the people who are oppressed are the same people who are a threat. Yet our tradition teaches us that awareness of threats around us and empathy for the oppressed are both essential. One without the other creates a distortion of Jewish values. One without the other creates an unbalanced Jewish personality. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, whenever I find myself in a situation that asks for balance and moderation, it never feels to me that the easiest, simplest, and most appealing path is moderation and balance. I don't know about you, but to me, it usually feels like one side of the balance is the one that I want, and the other is the one that I don't. Or maybe I'll switch back and forth between extremes. For me personally, it takes work to walk the path of moderation and find my balance. It takes a willingness to consider how I might be wrong. It takes a willingness to admit that I can be better. That's just me. I don't know about you. But I imagine that if we're honest with ourselves, we can relate to the struggle for balance on a personal level. What we need to learn from this season of the year, from Purim and from Passover, is that we must, each of us, find balance. We must, at the same time, be aware of the threats around us, and we must have empathy for those who are oppressed. Yes, it is a very interesting political time in this country, but that does not exempt us from this Jewish imperative. Now, this leads us to another important Jewish question. How should we help others? I think all of us know, but this is such an important concept that we can't talk about it enough. Giving to others, supporting others in the Jewish tradition is basic. It is not extra. It is not specially meritorious. It is simply the right thing to do. But something that some of us might not yet know is that the Jewish way to help others is in concentric circles. Rabbi Menachem Posner uses that phrase. I think it's a beautiful illustration. We know we must help and support those in need, along with Jewish schools and institutions and humanitarian causes. We should do this in concentric circles. Our family comes first, then our local Jewish community, then our local geographical area. In times of great scarcity, our tradition does provide us with specific orders of priority, and our tradition does teach that giving to support Israel and giving to support the study of Torah both have a special status. Yet, as we consider giving in our concentric circles, as we consider the ways we want to help and support, we should also remember our tradition teaches us when we support the needy, the impoverished in our local area, we support both Jews and non-Jews. We do this for the sake of peace. When we assembled, for example, our care packages at Shabbaton to be given out to those who are unhoused, we had no expectation that any distinction at all would be made between one needy person and another. We can look at them, we see that they're in need, and we give. It's that simple. Today, it's Refugee Shabbat. We're remembering it's part of a human experience to need to leave the place you're living in and to go somewhere completely unknown because things are so bad that where you are, that taking a chance on the unknown is the right thing to do. We're remembering the lesson of Passover. We're remembering we were strangers in Egypt, we were enslaved, and we left in an unknown and dangerous journey towards our promised land. And we're connecting to our empathy for others, that it may open our eyes to see those in our local area who are needy and remind us that supporting others is basic, not extra, that it's the right thing to do. And we're also recognizing there are many possible ways to do this. We're recognizing, yes, we have a diversity of opinions in our community, and that diversity is not and will never be a barrier to living our Jewish values. We don't all have to volunteer for the same exact organization. We don't all have to support the exact same humanitarian causes, but we do all have to do the mitzvah of tzedakah. We do all share the Jewish value that it's mandatory to help others who are in need. Today it's Refugee Shabbat, and it's Shabbat Zachor. On the very same day, we're reminding ourselves to have empathy for the oppressed. We're reminding ourselves that there are always threats in our midst. Our challenge today is to remember that both of these perspectives are equally Jewish. Both of these perspectives inform our Jewish values. May we be blessed with balance in our perspective, and may we be blessed with a sense of urgency and the motivation to take action. Shabbat Shalom.